Hello, everyone, and we are live for our stream today, and we thought it would be prudent to do one given that we've had a fairly tumultuous beginning to Trump administration 2.0. There's actually a lot of things to cover today. I'm joined by my long-term semi-co-host, Michael. And Michael, for those that aren't familiar with you, would you like to perhaps introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Michael. I kind of run a Telegram and sort of cover mostly events that happen in Russia and Ukraine. Kind of been divesting a bit from that onto wider geopolitics and kind of cultural issues. And every now and again, I join Felix on these streams to pontificate about the world in which we live.
All right, excellent. For those of you that are not, I've seen already people saying that they haven't seen any of my stuff in a long time. This is a measure that we actually probably will get into fairly soon within this stream. Basically, what it's called is shadow banning. YouTube is one of the last sort of major shadow banners standing. I'm not actually sure if that's true. I do know that Mark Zuckerberg and the other oligarchs of Silicon Valley joined President Trump during his inauguration, basically bending the knee, recognizing that the censorship and the duplicity that they've been practicing over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years almost has not been able to change the general cultural understanding of most people. You can't force people to believe lies by censoring them. I mean, this is why, for example, Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter and rebranding of X, it's interesting. YouTube is exactly the same thing. If you allow freedom of speech, platforms almost invariably move to the center or center right. And they do so because censorship is necessary for, I would say, concepts that are not based in reality. And most of what has been regurgitated by Democrats and platforms like Reddit prior to Musk's takeover of Twitter and rebranding of X, all of these platforms were heavily censored. And it's because the only way for these ideas to at least attempt to take root are through censorship. So I'm still putting out material, and I have been for a long time, but I've had tens of thousands of people in the comments over the last couple of years explain to me how they never see my material ever, even if they've got bells, whistles, and whatever checked, and they never see anything ever in the algorithm. But also that tens of thousands of people have been unsubscribed without their knowledge or consent. So I do urge you, if it's even possible for you to be able to be seeing this right now, to please check to see that you're still subscribed on whatever platform you are on. I mean, I'm attempting to branch out on to some of the other platforms like Rumble. If you are watching this on X or you're watching this on YouTube, please check out the Rumble. It's Rumble Felix Rex. You can find me there. I do post all of my material there first, other than, of course, live streams. So that being said, Michael, do you have anything to sort of add to that about, for example, I mean, the entirety of mostly the right on YouTube, for example, has been wiped out, other than basically, I don't know, kosher channels. I mean,
hopefully, touch wood, we will see a bit of a resurgence. But before we get into sort of the hard politics of it, how do you find Rumble? What's your impressions of it? Because I'm actually somewhat impressed with it. I use it to stream increasingly so, and it seems to. I do some streams with Count Dankula every now and again, and some of the things we say on Rumble would never fly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that it's definitely, it has it there. Its search function doesn't. I think this is one of the problems that BitChute has had as well. Is the search function is somewhat atrocious. We shall see. But yeah, I think it's definitely a contender. The only thing that it has to do is weave its way past the inevitable attempts to censor anything that's going on it. Now, this is where I'm really hoping that this sort of cultural shift that we're seeing coming out of Washington, which we will, and not out of Washington, but out of the United States in general. We'll talk about how, European countries are doubling down on this, but I think that the attempt at trying to shift the cultural narrative to where it has gone to such a place over the last 8 years that honestly, the only people that can follow it are acolytes of retardation. Let's be honest. I mean, you can't call a mouse a cat and the mouse is eating the dog and expect people to believe that. I mean, that's not a very good analogy, but we had reached such levels of, I don't want to use words that will get me in trouble. We've reached levels of absurdity that not even the most ridiculous of advocates and fanatics could even swallow at this point. I mean, we're witnessing, honestly, like our entire society in the Western world. Let's call a spade a spade. It does not look healthy. It does not look healthy anywhere. And we can get into the sort of ideas behind that as well. But going back to your question with Rumble, I think I'm reading some of the comments in the comment section. People are saying that they feel that the interface is a bit crappy. People are saying, man, it blows. Yeah, I would agree, guys. I mean, the problem is that if there's going to be any alternative to the grip, but the problem is once Rumble, I imagine becomes, if it even becomes a secondary YouTube, what will happen is it will be pretty much sidelined and controlled by the same people. So I don't think that we're ever going to be able to have narratives that aren't going to be allowed. I do think that they understand that they've had to ease off the sort of the throat of the cultural narrative. I do find it quite interesting. I don't know if you heard this, Michael. I mean, I know that you follow geopolitics and things like, for example, in Ukraine and whatnot. I don't know if you've heard, but the moment. Well, okay, let's backtrack a bit. Over the past 4 or 5 years, the enrollment or the recruiting rate at the U.S. military has just been utterly abysmal, to the point where it's not only the abysmal nature of recruiting and their inability to get people to join the military, the woke military, but also specifically young white men were not joining. They just refused. And part of that reason is because of, what they do. And I don't know if you've heard, but since Trump has taken office,
best recruiting figures years. Yeah,
they're going right back up. Now I don't know if that's fooled you again, or getting ready. I mean, I saw something by was it Colonel McGregor the other day, and he was saying, well, part of this is because he sees this as a prelude to war in Mexico on the border with the cartels, which are a lot better recruit. I mean, he basically explained that the cartels are Mexico at this point. So we can get into that as well. I don't know. Going back to let's just finish that up on Rumble. What are your thoughts on Rumble? I mean, you're saying you like it. Do you think it's a viable alternative?
I mean, from my interaction with it, I'm pleasantly surprised. Could definitely be better. But generally, I think it's probably the most viable sort of alternative to YouTube that has sort of emerged, that has legs. It seems to have decent financial backing, very high level political backing. Obviously, the guy who runs it is very close with people who are basically in the Trump administration at the moment. So you would like to imagine maybe some of that philosophy that seems to underpin Rumble to a degree might start to push through in terms of legislation and ideas. Looking at some of the stuff the Trump administration's coming out with, like banks cannot debank conservatives. Some talk about mandating that freedom of speech and expression now needs to be kind of held up online. I think obviously it takes what's the term I'm looking for? Obviously, Zuckerberg has made plaudits towards that. I think he's more sensing the wind, but in terms of if he actually comes to it, we'll have to keep an eye on that. But in terms of when the streams I sort of do, it's just refreshing to have, like, I do some gaming streams with Count Dankula and a Russian girl every now and again, and it's refreshing to just get off YouTube and just like say stuff that is vaguely would not be allowed on YouTube. It's refreshing to have a bit of an audience, to chill out with some friends online and be able to say what you actually kind of feel or make some edgy jokes.
But
and the like.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So that's just kind of my view on it. I'm not fully invested into Rumble. I don't think it's God's gift to Earth, but in terms of just the platform it is, from my use of it, I'm reasonably happy with it. I would feel a bit more secure personally. I kind of just gave up on YouTube after they basically demonetized me because I did a silly video of Yevgeny Prigozhin singing, the way that you've got the AI stuff that's come out where you can make people sing songs. I did one after Prigozhin died, singing a Frank Sinatra song, but apparently that was glorification of terrorism to YouTube. My account was just completely sort of demonetized and down the memory hole then. So I just kind of gave up on YouTube. So it's nice to just kind of invest a bit on Rumble and to know that I could sort of like do funny stuff like that or say edgy stuff. Obviously not going to get the big audience that you probably would have on YouTube. Not that I ever got that to begin with, but it just kind of is a nice place just to kind of stream and have a bit of fun and laugh.
No, I agree. The problem they have as well, one of the real problems with all of this, and it was Stefan Molyneux, after he was basically wiped from the internet. I mean, he was simultaneously, this is why it was so hilarious, excuse me, with these platforms, excuse me, when they talk about they don't collude with one another. Stefan Molyneux was wiped from Twitter. He was wiped from YouTube. He was wiped from MailChimp, for God's sakes.
Everything. It just completely within the space of, it was like 24, 48 hours.
Just utterly wiped from everything other than, I think it was BitChute. And when he was
on a side note, I kind of wonder, is he still going? I wonder what his thoughts are these days. If he might have a bit of a
okay. Well, let me finish what I was going to say, and then we can go on that. All I was going to say with what he said is he was still posting. At least he was posting for a while on BitChute afterward, and he said, I haven't been deplatformed. I've been replatformed, but people are not mentally capable of clicking over to a new platform. Now, this is part of the issue of why they have monopolies over these platforms, is because audiences and most people are mentally incapable of, okay, well, Stefan Molyneux, I like his things. Maybe I should just go watch him on BitChute. Most people are not mentally capable of doing that. They're oh, well, I must go to YouTube, and well, Stefan's not here anymore, therefore I can't see Stefan. And so, for example, there's people saying he's still very active. I'm going to get into that in a second. So he was basically making the point where it's not just content creators like himself and their censorship, right? But literally, you have people that are just mentally incapable of moving platforms. Like okay, for example, one of the worst offenders of all time, I would say, was Facebook. For example, I started a page on Facebook. I think it's still got about 40,000 subscribers there or something. But it was after it basically kicked off and my channel got sort of immediately attacked from all sides. They demanded to have, in order to use it, they demanded for my own personal account to have a government. So for example, they froze my account there, my personal account, and said, if you want to use it again, you're going to have to provide us with government ID. And I'm not going to give some website my ID, my passport or my driver's license or what have you. And luckily, I had a couple of other admins on there, but I've never really used it again. And the particular page, the Facebook page, got suspended for a while because I don't know. if you remember, but at the fall of Afghanistan a couple of years back, when America, when the United States withdrew unceremoniously, I'll say, and that's as nice as I can be about it. I could say running out with their tail between their legs. But when that happened, there was an incredible plethora of memes that were going around about the Talachad. I don't know if you remember this.
Yeah.
Right. And so the Talachad, I just made a video on the Talachads, and I got almost exactly the same thing you did as you were just describing. I got a strike on the page for the glorification of a prescribed group, a terrorist group, and the Taliban, which are in fact the recognized leaders of the nation state of Afghanistan. It's just that Western states don't like them.
It was I can remember it was a very bizarre time because you could go on Twitter at the time, and this is Twitter pre-Musk. This is cucked Twitter. You could say it's still a bit cucked, but this is pre-Musk Twitter, and you could literally speak to members of the Taliban on Twitter, and they would respond to you. They would send memes to you as they were going into Afghanistan, but yet you couldn't really post anything about them on like Boomerbook or YouTube or stuff like that. It was weird dynamics, how these platforms, whenever they can, they all line up along the same narrative, but then whenever the narrative isn't exactly set, you'll have this weird discrepancy where you could post a funny video about the Wagner group on one platform, but yeah, if you posted anything like it on the next platform, they basically regard you as a terrorist. It's like bro.
Yeah, exactly. And this is where I was going to go on about Facebook. I mean, one of the worst of just suppressing any kind of freedom of speech. And now you have Zuckerberg going, "Oh no, bro, I've had a change of heart, bro. Look, bro, I've grown up my hair, bro. I'm wearing a chain, bro." And he's saying now, "Well, I believe in freedom of speech." I don't know how anyone is still even on that platform. People say, "Well, I
boomers.
keep in touch with my."
Well,
I understand boomers, but other people will say, "Well, I keep in touch with my friends." People have emails, man, or find another way. You're just feeding the machine with these kind of platforms, especially.
Yeah, I mean, I have a Facebook account because families on Facebook.
Yeah, I gotta do it for family, and when we have to meet. And, yeah, okay, right. So you're part of the problem.
Wow, I might be part of the problem, but I never post. I never post. The account is just there just so I can use the messenger. So
which is the messenger is completely been, and even Mark Zuckerberg say it's compromised. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, Facebook. I don't know how anyone is still on that. I don't know how anyone would use it. I don't know how anyone would say, "Whoa, Mark is becoming based. Maybe we should use it, man." Okay, that sounds like a great idea. Mark based. Yeah, I don't trust any of these people. They're just absolute garbage human beings. Okay, some people have been saying that Stefan Molyneux is he's active now. Here's the one thing about Stefan is as far as I understand, he has the biggest platform that he has left has been reintroduced, and it's like a lot of people, he got his Twitter back.
Really?
After Elon Musk reintroduced a lot of people that had been banned since the over the years for basically just freedom of speech issues. He's back, but as far as I understand, he won't. That is his biggest platform. As far as people are saying, he's got his own website and he's on Rumble, or I guess, can anyone clarify that? It kind of went past me on the chat there.
Oh yeah,
he's got his website and he's maybe on Rumble or BitChute or somewhere else. Oh yeah, so yeah. But when was the last time? Because as far as I know, he's not posting. Let me take a look. You just got it there.
Posted July 2020. I actually thought he was. I don't know why I thought he was.
No, but as far as I understand, he's saying it's a matter of principle. He won't post there because he wants an apology from Twitter. Now, I'm not sure if that's the case. But the one thing I would say on that is it's not the same owners, so it's going to be a bit of an issue for them to do that. So yeah, people are saying he's just doing philosophy and call-in shows now. He's not doing the one, like the shows I think he got really popular with were the Truth About, I don't know, the Truth About the Roman Empire.
Yeah, the proper Red
All
Pill
right,
stream.
I don't want to make this about Stefan Molyneux and such, but anyway, we've kind of gone like we're kind of more talking about things. Let's like shift gears here a little bit and talk about the first couple of weeks of the new Trump administration, 47. How do you think it's going so far?
I actually think it well, with one big caveat, which I'm sure we'll get into. I think it's actually gone fairly well. It's certainly beaten my expectations from what I was anticipating so far. The geopolitics of it, I'm excited by some of these executive orders, touching on the things we've just discussed about trying to break down these sort of seedy, literal kind of the deep state made manifest, these connections between government, social and legacy media corporations. I'm kind of excited about stuff like that. Was a bit iffy about the tariffs, but those seem to have worked out well so far. And then, like I say, everything was going really well up until suddenly Gaza is going to become the 51st state. That kind of threw me for a loop. So I kind of knew we were always, I don't know, on the Israeli-Palestinian issue. I know this is a big thing to ask, but if you put that aside, if you can put that aside, I'd actually say it's going very well so far. But then bringing in the Israeli-Palestinian issue, I mean, I always knew, and I think we all know that sooner or later, Trump was going to do something for Netanyahu that he always does, and it was going to be big. But bro, it is something else. So that's kind of thrown a bit of a spanner into the mix, certainly in my estimation of it. But general, I think so far for like us in the quote unquote West, yeah, Trump is not our guy, but I do feel like the cultural and the general social needle, at least in the United States, is starting to turn ever so slightly back in quote unquote our direction. My hope, my big hope is, God knows, as someone who lives in the United Kingdom at the moment, with Elon Musk, again, whether he actually believes it, whether it's this or that, Elon Musk's trying to sort of fund and spearhead a European nationalist party in every country revival kind of thing. A bit optimistic for that, again, with some caveats. So I'm optimistic. But the Israeli stuff is, kind of expecting it, but he really blew it out of the water. Again, is it actually some kind of 4D Trumpian 65 dimensional underwater backgammon mahjong chess move that he's pulling here? Who knows? But I kind of always knew that there was going to, it is Trump, and he is an American politician, and America and Israel, it is what it is. It's kind of expected, but he kind of really went above and beyond what I was even expecting there.
Well, we have a brief clip on this. If you could chat, just make sure to tell me if you hear this or not, and because I am using some crappy restreaming software, so we'll play this just very quickly.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years. The U.S. will take.
So did you hear that all right, Michael? Was that all right?
I heard it, yeah.
All right, great. So now what he's talking about is the United States will, after having funded the demolition, let's just be honest, after having funded the demolition.
Yeah, I mean, for everything he said there, he didn't exactly say who made it into a demolition site, who turned it into
and now the American taxpayer is going to be on the hook for for cleaning the whole thing out, getting rid of unexploded ordnance, all of these things. And the American taxpayer is going to, and now they're also going, he has not ruled out military, any kind of military occupation of the area as well. Now, I think there's a lot of people, I saw on X, it was Rand Paul, and I think his father was even chiming in on this, that people didn't vote for making Israel great again. They voted for making America great again. Now, how do you think this is going to go over with his base, with him talking about not only, again, throwing in an occupation force into the Middle East where, what is it? The United States has gotten out of a 20-something year commitment in Afghanistan and the other, and Iraq, and it's still in multiple countries across the Middle East, but also getting into probably a very tense occupation in a place like Gaza, reintroducing the U.S. military into another Middle Eastern situation, but also paying for all of the destruction wrought on the area. What do you think? How do you think that'll go over with his base?
Well, I mean, with the sort of more red pillish MAGA types, I don't think it'd go down very well. But then again, there is this inherent part of any Republican base and part of the MAGA base where it is just like, you know, the evangelical types, the ultra Zionists, you know, everything for Israel kind of thing. I'm sure they're excited and esteemed by this, but even then, I was surprised by like even Lindsey Graham sort of in his weaselly way offered kind of a tepid, is he really suggesting this kind of thing? This kind of brings me into, see, especially from his first term, I know some people will probably push back against this straight away, but I actually think Trump is very good at power politics. I think he's very good at geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
I think out of everything from his first term, the one thing where I think there was actually proper good ground made was in his geopolitical stances. So part of me is like, is Donald Trump really going to send American troops and all this kind of stuff into Gaza? Like, is this
okay? So, for example, we've got a comment here. Gaza has been an intractable problem for generations. Kudos to President Trump for seeking a long-term solution as he did in his first term. Yeah. Now, here's the question. Yeah, it is an intractable problem, but why is it an intractable problem for the United States? Tibet is an intractable problem.
Well, see, this is where I'm
all around the world.
See, this is kind of where I'm parceling it. You know, maybe there's a bit of nuance here that maybe Trump is playing out with, because like, in terms of like the tariffs and stuff, I think Trump is kind of playing at a bigger game here. Maybe, you know, maybe this is a cope explanation. But I think Trump is sort of maybe potentially, unless he is like actually serious about Gaza becoming like the 51st state. I think what Trump has kind of done is thrown like a dead cat onto the table, in the sense that he's kind of said, look, this has been an intractable problem. And if the Arab states and if Israel isn't going to do something to properly sort this, well, then America's going to put boots on the ground and take this territory over, which is obviously the Palestinian issue being as a motive as it is in the Middle East. I think that it's kind of the pushing factor for like the Saudis, potentially for the Jordanians and the like, to step up and actually kind of take charge of the Palestinian issue as part of, you know, maybe there's kind of some big thing going on behind the scenes with Israeli Arab normalization to say like Egypt, Jordan and stuff needs to step in and actually find a solution to the Palestinian issue, or else the Israelis are just going to annex it and the Americans are going to pay for it, kind of thing. Maybe that's a nuance that we're looking at. That's kind of what I would start to lean towards looking at is geopolitics. I mean, as someone who is,
where would the Palestinians go? As far as I understand, all of the regional actors have rejected any kind of resettlement for the Palestinians. And yesterday, President Netanyahu, or Prime Minister Netanyahu, he exclaimed that, well, perhaps they should all be sent to Europe, and specifically more to Ireland, Spain, and it was a third country that had recognized the Palestinians as an independent country.
Well, I do think that ultimately Trump wants Israel to annex Gaza. That's
Oh yeah, I
the
agree.
way.
I mean,
Yeah.
I agree. And but the one thing is I would agree that if they're going to annex it, it should be annexed by the United States at least provisionally, because having the Israeli state annex Israel, or sorry, annex Gaza would create all manner of just. I mean, the anger is there. It's never going to go away. But I think Trump is right that there has to be some kind of long-term
Well,
solution
look,
to this. It's
personally,
not working.
my view, my view would be the United States shouldn't get involved. The United States should cut off all foreign aid to Israel. I'm that kind of person. I don't think I don't think Trump or the United States should have any ambitions on Gaza. And if the Israelis want to annex Gaza, that should be up to the Israelis, and the Israelis should pay the price for that from the ramifications that will have in the region. I don't think that this idea that Trump should provide like a middle ground to basically pay and prepare Gaza and ethnically cleanse it for an Israeli annexation is, I would be very strongly against that. And I don't think I think that's what Trump is talking about, in the sense that I think, Trump talking about annexing Greenland. I don't think he really wants to annex Greenland. What I think it is he's kind of throwing out these very extreme positions in order to force, like, to say, like, this is the option that we are aiming for. Either you guys come to the table with something that's acceptable to us, or else this is where the United States is going towards in terms of its policy. That's kind of what I think is happening here. I know that the one thing is I know there are at this moment there are American military contractors on the ground in Gaza, which is a bit disturbing, which kind of makes me think that, is he actually kind of serious in this? Is he going to kind of maybe do a fudge where it's not going to be the US military, it's just going to be Blackwater and PMCs like that will do the grunt work of it? But at the same time, I do think Trump kind of has this mindset where he likes to see himself as like the definitive ender of conflicts. This is why I think he went out of his way with like North Korea in his first term, and why I think he has big ambitions in places like Ukraine. And obviously he has a very strong pro-Israeli bias in his politics, which I think is one of his big downsides. But at the same time, he said it. The White House has kind of walked it back, but I just still find it very hard for me to reconcile. And, until Donald Trump personally steps into Gaza to raise the stars and bars over, Mara Gaza, the new golf course or something there, I will find it very hard to believe this is actually what he's pushing towards. I think it's more of a diplomatic play. Although saying that, I do, like I say, I think Trump's ultimate ambition is for the Palestinians effectively to be pushed out of Palestine into Egypt, into Jordan, into wherever, dispersed across the Arab world, because ultimately it does appear that he obviously thinks that Israel should just annex Gaza, and it's increasingly looking like he is thinking the same for the West Bank.
Well, I would agree with that. I mean, well, here's another thing, because we should probably shift gears a little bit, because I want to keep this down to about an hour and a half, and I believe we've been going for 40 minutes. What is your? Let me see if I can find anything on this. Maybe I'll try to find something on RT, because RT is one of the most censored media outlets now. I mean, going back to RT, have you heard anything from our girl Lauren Chen or Lauren Southern since this thing happened in September? I mean, they were. I don't really see a problem with them accepting money from Russian agents, and the fact that other countries are
without going into details, I don't like Lauren Southern for reasons me and you personally are aware of. In terms of Lauren Chen, she is alive, because I did see that she liked to post on Instagram about 2 weeks ago. So that's as far as I know there. But I guess this is going into the USAID debacle. I mean, I think we kind of pointed out on the stream at the time, whenever we sort of pointed out, like, this is what the Russian state does fund, and that the Western states pretty much do the exact same thing. It's just with recent revelations, I guess, not even I was aware of the debauched nature of what the U.S. aid, the U.S. state effectively funded in the dark. Genuinely, like literally the deep state made manifest.
Right. A couple of things. I just want to go back. There's from Tune In Dropout. He says the U.S. isn't a damned if you do, damned if you don't in Gaza, playing a mediator role as the lesser of two evils. I actually kind of really agree with that. But the problem is I would also agree with some of the other people that are saying in the chat that, I mean, and as you've said, I mean, they've been trying to put this situation to bed for what, 80 years. And I can think of, I don't know how many presidents you can think of until Yasser Arafat died sitting there and, oh, I've got the peace plan in Camp David. I mean, it was, I don't know, Carter and I don't know, maybe JFK. I don't even know. But, you know, going back quite a ways, Clinton, probably Reagan, probably Bush Sr., I don't know what Bush Jr., but nothing works. It never works, right? So I don't really see, and part of this, I don't want to be, falling to one side or the other, but one of the problems is that within the Islamic religion, once a part of when any part of land becomes Islamic, it's Islamic for all time. And if another group is able to, for example, with the Spaniards and the Reconquista, claw back their land, it doesn't matter. That land is Islamic for all time. So that you're going to have problems with that, and that's an issue. Going back to the things. Let's see. Poor Lauren, I loved her until this Destiny debacle. The people are talking about, a lot of people are saying this. Lauren loves Destiny. Yeah, I heard about this, the whole Destiny debacle.
I'm just going to, not to get too much into that subject,
Yeah.
but if your final straw was the Destiny stuff, then you really haven't been paying attention to the antics of Miss Southern.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, going back to the reason I brought this up is, if you take a look at, I'm not trying to push one outlet or the other, but RT and other, for example, outlets like Al Jazeera, when they are commenting on issues that are not local, right? You can't read or watch RT. I haven't watched RT in years, but and for those of you who are not aware, RT is Russia Today. It's kind of like the BBC of Russia or the CBC of Canada or the ABC of Australia. It's the state-run media, and which has been banned pretty much everywhere in Europe because they don't want their population having any kind of alternative to their own state media. But I have found that RT as well as Al Jazeera do have some very good coverage on areas that are outside of their own domestic issues. For example, you're not going to want to read Al Jazeera on, the Muhammad cartoons debacle, for example, something like that. And you can find some really good pushback or also just analytical opinion pieces on RT on a host of things, especially pertaining to Western Europe. And I read a really good one on RT the other day, just talking about Western Europe as being probably the largest protracted geopolitical parasite in the world, right? Which I thought was quite interesting, and I completely agreed with it. So anyway, going back to, we don't want to get this Destiny thing off. Here people are saying I like RT. It's fairly good. Let's take a look at another couple of things about Trump before we move into U.S. aid. And we've got a couple more of these Trump things here. I'm going to just switch over. Play screen sharing with this one, I believe. Okay, share. All right. I don't know if this one has very good sound. Chat, you're gonna have to tell me, but I'm taking these ones off. So here we go. Let's take a look. This is only 38 seconds, everybody.
One of the wonders of the world, one of the great wonders of the world.
It's really low,
We
isn't
didn't
it?
give it to China. We gave it to Panama. And Panama's been ripping down all the China language signs. They've been working like mad to try, but about 70% of the signs were up and they were written in Chinese, and that's not the deal. So we're going to take it back. They've already offered to do many things, but we think it's appropriate that we take it back. They've totally violated the agreement. We have an agreement. They violated the agreement, and Marco Rubio's going over there to talk to the gentleman that's in charge.
All right, so Trump's talking about the Panama Canal. Now, for those of you guys that aren't aware, the Panama Canal was built by the United States and was an integral part of United States territory up until, I believe, was it 1997 or 1999? Well, no, Jimmy Carter handed it over to them, but it wasn't handed over when Carter was president. It was kind of like the Hong Kong handover.
When was Noriega? When was that invasion? Was that
was 89, I believe.
89, yeah.
89, 90, something like that.
So it must have been around about 97 whenever the canal was handed over there.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but the Panama Canal was built by the United States. Strangely enough, as one of the things about the United States is you're not allowed to become president. One of the large issue with Barack Hussein Obama when he was running for president was whether or not he was born in the United States. Because one of the things that has to be one of the rules for presidential ascension is, I think, number 30. You got to be 35 years old. I'm not sure if it's been codified recently, but you have to go to Jerusalem and pray at the Wailing Wall.
Careful, Felix. We are still on YouTube.
Yeah, I know. I'm just joking. But the other one is you have to be born in the United States, right? And what was one of the big issues was the whole birther movement, which I believe President Trump was a believer in, was that Barack Hussein Obama wasn't born in Hawaii, but he was in fact born in Kenya. Now, one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is because when the United States controlled Panama, it was known as the Canal Zone, and Barack Hussein Obama's opponent in the presidential election in 2008 or 2012? 2008, I think, was what was the old guy's name? John McCain. And he was born in Panama, as far as I remember. And because it was a part of the United States, it was the Canal Zone. I'm assuming his father was in the military or something along those lines. Basically, Trump is talking about repatriating control of the Canal Zone to the United States. Now, I don't really have a problem with that. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, I mean, I like Trump, and my opinion of the United States has certainly gone up now that he's back in charge. Again, with some caveats, but at the same time, he isn't going to be there forever. And is it really a good idea to inculcate American imperialism to retake things like Panama, Greenland, Canada, and stuff, whenever in 4 years' time we could have a Kamala Harris presidency? That would be my kind of thing. But at the same time, I mean, from my understanding, is his views around the Panama Canal, and again, this goes back to his geopolitical stances, is because ultimately, like, Trump's worldview is the contest with China. That's his big. That's the big rival he views. It isn't Russia. It isn't necessarily the European Union. Everything is about China. Everything apart from his Middle East policy and stuff to do with Israel. But generally, his geopolitics is defined by his view of this rivalry with China. This is why you had Trump's first term. You had things like his attempt at détente with Russia and Vladimir Putin, attempting to sort of bring Russia out of the Chinese orbit, why he did the extraordinary diplomacy with North Korea, an attempt to also detach North Korea from Chinese influence in orbit.
Mhm.
So, from my understanding, is his big contention with Panama is that the various Chinese companies, I believe they're mostly based in Hong Kong, because of the sort of diplomatic position of Hong Kong and the ability to sort of easily invest and bring in capital from abroad. Is that there are Chinese companies slowly acquiring land and interests in Panama, particularly at the around the isthmus where it opens into the Atlantic and the Pacific. And I believe that Trump's understanding is that this is part of the Chinese global push to secure influence and to diminish the American influence across the world. Obviously, the Panama Canal, historically, World War II, World War I, has been of utmost importance to the United States, particularly the concept of the freedom of navigation, but then also the freedom of navigation with preference to the United States as well. Whereas if a Chinese company, effectively in some hypothetical scenario, took a leading stake in control of the canal, then they could jack up tariffs, charges, and tolls on American shipping, block the canal to various U.S. military shipping that might go through the canal. So I believe that in Trump's and his administration's worldview is that is a geostrategic issue that needs to be sorted. And again, do I think that he is looking?
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Would you be able to? Because I think you're moving back and forth from your microphone. You
sorry.
Sounding good. Yeah, that sounds much better because you're coming. When you move away from it, you're coming through very canned and it's hard to hear. So sorry, I don't mean to
apologies. I've got a microphone like put above my head, so I kind of leaned in to speak to the screen as opposed to the microphone.
Oh, okay, yeah. If you could just, I'm sorry. I just said people are also saying that. If you don't mind.
No problem. Apologies for that. So, do I believe that Trump is looking to effectively repatriate control of the canal in the same way like he's looking to take over Gaza? This kind of, there will be an American administration that the Panama Canal, and the Panama Canal is ruled effectively from Washington in a detached state kind of thing. Kind of like the Gaza situation. Maybe that's not actually the goal, is what he's done here, which I think is pretty much defined his foreign relations since he's come back into office. Is just he's throwing out this maximalist position of like, this is the extreme that we will push towards unless you give us like concessions, unless you remove Chinese influence from the canal zone, unless you allow a substantial American stake in the canal, unless you give us like Panama gives a preferential treatment to the United States because we built the canal. We gave the canal back to you. In many ways, Panama only exists as a sovereign nation because of the United States. For people who are not aware, Panama was detached from Gran Colombia by the Americans, so the Americans could build the canal independent of Bogota at the time. So I think that's kind of probably what I think Trump's really looking to kind of turn Panama as a state into sort of like a satellite proxy client state kind of affair, rather than a sort of independent sovereign state that could find international benefactors in Beijing, Moscow, Caracas, or somewhere like that. That's what I think Trump is actually looking for, as opposed to effectively recreating the American empire with the Panama Canal. But then again, as with the Gaza stuff, who knows? Maybe Trump is looking to effectively recreate the American empire from the early 19th century. I guess it's just kind of wait and see. But from my understanding is that Marco Rubio has already been down to Panama and secured a fair amount of concessions already from the Panamanian government. I believe that they were talking about effectively evicting various Chinese companies from parts of the canal and not renewing contracts and economic agreements with Beijing going forward.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, the reason I'm bringing that up as well is this kind of can segue into what we were talking about previously. Have you heard of the Ben Gurion Canal project?
Yeah, I am aware of it. Yeah.
All right, so there is. Let's see. Let me replace this. Now this has been talked about for a while. Let me see if I can bring this up here for you. Share. There is a lot of hubbub that part of the reason for clearing out Gaza would be for the creation of a secondary and alternate canal that would just turn. Sorry, I just got to turn something off in my room. That I'm in, it's kind of hot where I had the heaters on too much. So the Ben Gurion Canal. Let me just bring this up for everybody they can see. So let's move from the Panama Canal over to the Suez Canal. So the Suez Canal right here, as you can see, and this is one of the biggest pirated places on the planet, but it goes through the Red Sea and comes up through the Gulf of Suez, and it's a canal that goes all the way from the Gulf here up to the Mediterranean. The proposed Ben Gurion Canal, oh, sorry, I've got the wrong one on here. We're going to change the, sorry, guys. Please. All right, so the current Suez Canal is coming from the Arabian Sea into the Red Sea and then up the Gulf of Suez into the Mediterranean. There is talk now of Israel being able to bypass Egypt and building its own canal via the Gulf of Aqaba and through Israel, and I guess going through Gaza. And this is where a lot of people are becoming quite agitated, believing that some of the current hostilities in the region are, in fact, because of this particular plan. Now, let me bring up the proposal. So it would be like here, for example, right there.
I don't know. Looking at that, I'm not too sure how. Like, look, if you look at the size of the Panama Canal, the actual bit where they cut through the earth, it's not that long. Like, you look at this canal, and you're talking like that's a good 150, 200 kilometers. And
yeah. The one thing about that is I don't think it would be very different from, for example, the canal they've done. This has been done before, as I remember. One of the first major canal projects in the world was via to Manchester that wanted to bypass Liverpool. Let me see if I can find this one. Let me go back to the map here, which would be probably about the same size in distance. So you've got the United Kingdom, and maybe it wouldn't be as big. But so Liverpool had a sort of linchpin on trade out to the Atlantic, right? Obviously, because you have the ocean here, and you've got this this delta coming in, and the River Mersey. And what you had was the city of Manchester not wanting to pay the city of Liverpool for its transportation. So they basically just built this canal starting right here in the River Mersey at the mouth of this estuary right here, and it going all the way, as you can see, all the way into the city of Manchester. So I don't know, with modern, I mean, you look at the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is much larger than the Suez Canal.
Yeah,
I mean that is a like, take a look at the size of that thing, But it does have natural waterways. This is possible.
yeah, anyway, that's what I mean. It's the Suez, because sure you have like the Great Bitter Lake and stuff, and I'm not saying it is infeasible. I'm just wondering, is it economically feasible, especially in a region like Israel? Because I would imagine the Egyptians aren't just going to stand by and watch the Israelis effectively steal their main foreign revenue stream. Either it'll be Washington that'd have to really step up its aid to Egypt to keep the Egyptians on side with this kind of thing. And I can't imagine, like, I'm just looking, you know, Israel's kind of stomped all possible military opposition towards it in the region recently, but I can't imagine like the Jordanians, the Saudis, the Egyptians especially would just stand by and watch for like a decade or so it would take for the Israelis to carve this thing out of the earth and just be like, oh, well, this is it. Nothing we can do, guy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I got it.
Especially with the Houthis as well, pretty stuck in at the bottom of the Red Sea Canal. I'm like, I don't know. It's just the viability of the entire thing.
No, yeah, no, I get you. There is definitely issues with that, but I mean, stranger things have been have done. So, for example, there's Decepticity says that the world's largest man-made canal is 1,800 kilometers in China, and actually, I think I saw something on that just recently, and it was talking about the man-made canal in terms of bringing fresh water to the deserts of China. Quite incredible, actually, in a lot of ways. You know, that having been said, let's move on to our last topic of the day, and that being the sort of debacle of the U.S. aid and some of the things that have been found out about that thing. Let me see if I can find anything to throw up on that. First of all, maybe do you want to explain that to the audience that hasn't probably heard anything about this?
Yeah, for anyone who I guess has been living under a rock, I guess.
Yeah.
It turns out that if you are an American citizen, you have been paying for the US government to make transgender mice. You've been paying for a transgender opera in Ireland. You've been paying for 32 extremely overpriced, I think it's something stupid like $32,000 per subscription, a $32,000 per year subscription to Politico, and 190 or so of them for, like, I don't know, people in the US State Department who really liked Politico. Pretty much every far left political NGO in Poland, the American government or the American taxpayer has been paying for that. Pretty much every single attempt to overturn the Viktor Orban government, almost the entire political opposition in Hungary, pretty much every LGBTQ whatever organization in Serbia, diversity scholarships in Burma/Myanmar, I
read that there was a couple million that was given over to encourage atheism in Nepal, and also what was it, $26 million a year at the Pentagon for sushi. Obviously, it wasn't going to sushi, but yeah. Sorry, continue. I was just throwing that in there.
Yeah, it turns out that for the past 8 years or so, where any talk about, like, you know, the U.S. deep state is this is conspiracy, this is far right talking points. Oh, this doesn't exist. You know, this is all Trump MAGA extremist talking points. It turns out it's all true. And it seemed to have been funneled via U.S. aid. U.S. aid was instrumental in funding various things in the United States, almost all of it politically partisan, pushing like hyper-progressive politics or funding left-wing media. And then in terms of this, kind of what we were touching on the stream where we were talking about the tenant
media. I don't mean to
stuff.
interrupt, but I just wanted to add to that. There's also reports. I don't know if you remember when high-profile Hollywood stars were going to Ukraine at the beginning of the conflict.
That is fake. That
is fake. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure about that. So go ahead then.
Yeah, it's believable, but from my understanding is that actually is one of the few things that isn't true. So it is a bit, people do have to kind of be mindful that there is some ludicrous stuff that's come out that is just, it's true and you wouldn't believe it whenever you hear it. But then there are other stuff that is, for example, I believe that the source of that has come from like the Russians, because the Russians obviously have their interests in this. And going back to where we were talking about like tenant media, Trump has kind of opened the door on US. Well, it's mostly Elon, because Elon's the guy who's gone in there and is pulling all this stuff out. Is that you will find other states have their own versions of US aid that are pushing their various politics. So, like the Russians will put out a story like this, and the like. So, there is some ludicrous stuff far more ludicrous than the celebrities going out to meet Zelensky, I'm sure. And there is significant amounts of stuff that USAID has funded that is pro-Ukrainian, but that specific story, from my understanding, from what I've seen, is actually false. But
what about, there are people commenting on that millions had gone to George Soros's organizations, and I have heard that for the takeover of the DAs in the U.S. You know, to install these psychopaths.
Yeah, well, like I said, this is literally, like, we talked about it, kind of touched on it in the Tenant Media stream, where, like, you know, pretty much all states kind of fund this stuff. It's just, in many ways, it's astounding. To like, U.S. aid is pretty much like the American empire made manifest. Obviously, it has its domestic interests, where it was effectively the deep state funding politically partisan, you know, it was bolstering politically partisan positions. And that's how Democrats, progressives and stuff really entrenched themselves into the American federal government and institutions of power. But then internationally, like I say, I believe I touched on it in the Tenant Media stream, where like American influence globally was like the gay rights lobby, the LGBTQ agenda in other countries. For example, the big example I'd come up with is in Georgia. Recently, Georgia, the Caucasian country, not the US state, was almost, the government, the duly elected government there was almost overturned by a color revolution. Because the Georgian government effectively wanted to put in a new law that said that foreign NGOs, especially like gender NGOs, had to register where their money was coming from, because Georgian people generally didn't like English-speaking Western Europeans and North Americans turning up in the middle of Tbilisi trying to hold gay pride parades. So the Georgian government put in a new law saying, like, well, we need to know who these groups are and where they're getting their money from. And then this kind of spiraled out of control, where certain Western countries, especially the U.S. State Department under Joe Biden and USAID, was effectively funding almost the entirety of the Georgian opposition to try and overturn the government on the grounds that it's too pro-Russian and this is like a Russian client state coming into power, not because the Georgian government was trying to wheedle out like unironic foreign influence that's happening in Georgia. The only problem is they were trying to get rid of the wrong foreign influence. So it is quite interesting to see, one, that the Trump administration, obviously for political terms, it is kind of, touch wood, hopefully it continues, this whole vibe shift, the whole pronouns, the gender stuff, the ultra progressivism that is kind of defined our age and really kind of been emblematic of the rot of what is Western civilization and culture. So there's that aspect of it domestically, but it's also interesting to see effectively the United States, in one sense, dismantle its global empire of influence. If that makes sense, by effectively dismantling USAID, is a lot of these groups that are very pro-American because they see like America funding like the LGBTQ rights lobby in Poland, the gay pride parade that is almost exclusively attended only by like Western diplomats and funded by Western interests in Belgrade and Serbia. How the American government has just kind of like abolished that. Yeah, under Elon Musk. I think that to me is like a very pronounced and prominent thing that I don't think a lot of people are really kind of picking up on. They're focusing on like the, you know, why are Americans funding this? Like these crazy stories about what American taxpayers were funding, like all this decades of entrenched corruption, money laundering and stuff that was going on under the guise of USAID. But at the same time, I don't think a lot of people are picking up on the fact that like just the rolling back, the intentional and willing rolling back of American influence globally via this. Again, I'm not too sure exactly where to think of it. I think I don't know. I've kind of meandered for a bit there, but do you have any thoughts on that, Felix?
Well, yeah, I do. I think part of the thing is that most of the global influence that the United States has been exerting hasn't really been exerting American interests. I mean, yeah, I understand that, for example, trying to throw a color revolution in a place like Georgia, and I actually had a friend of mine who was there just at Christmas time, and there were some protests here and there. But I don't think that, again, these kinds of issues are pertinent to the targeted countries. So, for example, we've had George on these streams several times, and he was talking about how right up to the fall of Kabul, the people that were in the embassy there at the State Department were talking about how they believed that once the American military had left, that then the Taliban wouldn't be afraid of the military power of the United States, and then they would learn to then accept the transgender and rainbow flags for the beauty and progressiveness that they were, and that the new dawn of a progressive Afghanistan was the requirement of it was the withdrawal of U.S. forces, as we know that once the forces were withdrawn, the whole thing fell apart. And now women are not even allowed outside and able to speak in Afghanistan. Another example of this would be in these places like Serbia, as you say. I mean, even here in Japan, when they have the Pride Parade, there might be like 7 or 8 Japanese people in the parade, but it will be almost entirely Western people, funded by Western corporations, supposedly. And it's also very, very PG in terms of parental guidance. It's not in any way what you'd see in a Western country with, I don't want to get into the debauchery of those in Western countries, but it isn't. It has a much more family-friendly look to it. But again, it's not something that really gels with the local culture. It's not something that they are going to be. Really?
Just to kind of point out one ludicrous example I distinctly remember. So I've been to Budapest. I've actually been to Budapest with you once, Felix.
Yeah.
I've got some friends in Budapest, and I can remember this vivid, ironically on Facebook of all places, part of the problem. But I can remember at the height of the summer of love of 2020. And I can remember seeing a Hungarian, as it comes up on your home feed and Facebook, like your friend commented on this. And I can remember seeing my Hungarian friend commented on something about a Black Lives Matter protest in Budapest.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, what? Black lives? Is there any black people in Hungary? And I can remember looking at the Facebook event page for the Black Lives Matter protest in Budapest. And I looked at the organizer, and it was a young girl from California, from San Francisco, who was studying at the George Soros, I think it's the Central European University, the George Soros funded university in Budapest. And then she also interned at the American Embassy in Budapest. And years later, like, I kind of always suspected what was really going on there. But years later, if Elon sets up like a big group, like a big web page where you can just go in and like Google, like, what did the US aid budget fund in Hungary in 2020, I bet you, if I was able to do that, I would find out that girl was being paid by US aid to organize a Black Lives Matter protest in Budapest.
Well, it's funny because it's funny that you say that, because it was almost exactly the same thing in Japan. It was a young black girl studying at one of these things and was trying to organize a Black Lives Matter protest movement in Japan. And,
probably funded by US aid or an intern at the US Embassy, or worked for some kind of bullshit American or Western NGO based in Japan.
Where you have to understand is that the country of Japan, it has no history of having multiculturalism or even multiracialism. It's kind of like South Korea or North Korea.
Well, sure. The American Embassy in Seoul infamously flew the trans pride flag alongside the big Black Lives Matter banner in Seoul.
Which it's kind of ridiculous because it's trying to enforce these Soros, narratives of American racial issues onto countries that just don't have them. It's like, somebody's posting like BLM is really big in Bhutan. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, why aren't Japanese out on the street going, Black Lives Matter? Say it. Say his name. Black Lives Matter. Say his name. Why aren't they out there? Prince Floyd of the fentanyl.
Why didn't the Taliban, whenever they took over Kabul, keep up that infamous mural of George Floyd that was put up on the American embassy wall?
I know. I mean, you would imagine that, as in the United States, he has been deified. So this is, the deification of probably one of the most saintly men in American history. I mean, you'd expect that they as well would honor and revere him as he is in the United States. I mean, statues across the country have gone up to behold his glory, and the glory that he represents.
Like, obviously, the British government, and I know for a fact, like, the British civil service is riddled with stuff as bad as what comes out of USAID. Like, certain NGOs that have gone out and doxed me and tried to dox you, Felix. I'm sure we know of the ones I'm talking about, which get UK government money, stuff like this. So I'm not trying to pawn off the dire state of my own country, which is fucking dying at the moment. Onto American influence, but I do find it very suspicious that the British Museum did a big, I think it was the British Museum, or it might have been the Tate Modern, but there was a news stories went around sometime last year where British museums were talking about like the impact of some kind of art or exhibit on BIPOC people and indigenous communities in Britain.
And wouldn't the indigenous community of Britain be the Welsh, the Scots, and
No, that's was the thing, is the museum never clarified exactly who was the indigenous people of Britain. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure what it was is this exhibit and whatever whoever drew it up, I'm pretty sure it was probably like a North American, probably an American person who, and this feeds into the wider, like, I think USAID has probably funded this because it's come out that USAID has funded parts of the BBC Foreign Service and stuff like this. And I've always found it, and to be fair, a lot of conservative-minded people in the UK have always found it very strange, like why in British terms, like in British culture and in British politics, we always talk about like the Black community in the same way, in the same kind of terms that like Americans talk about their Black community, about the issue of slavery, about like the civil rights movement and stuff. This is stuff that never happened to Britain. Obviously, there was the British slave trade outside of Britain, but there is no Black people in the UK today who were enslaved in the United Kingdom, in the British Isles, because it was illegal here. But yeah, for some reason, the narrative around the Black community has always kind of had this very American-centric term to it. It's always talked about in very, like, why did Black Lives Matter become a thing here? Like, we're not America. Black people aren't being killed in America in the way.
There was no Jim Crow in the United Kingdom. Yeah. There was no slavery. There was no Civil War to decide the question of slavery. There was no importation. I mean, prior to the end of the Second World War, there was probably about 5,000 Black people in the entirety of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
I understand. Like so I've wondered that too. I've seen these Black Lives Matters, and they were on their knees praying to George Floyd.
Yeah, why are statues in Bristol in the United Kingdom being torn down because some Black drug addict in Minnesota, of all fucking places? And I think ultimately it will come down to, I bet you the British government will probably go out of its way and try and hide it. And I'm pretty sure the British government, via its own very dodgy and dubious elements in the civil service and the like have played a very big part in this as well. But I'm pretty sure that American taxpayers have probably been paying for decades to have this kind of American view of race relations imported into the United Kingdom and into pretty much every other country where they could get away with it.
Well, I do know that, and it was this was out a couple of years ago, or maybe about a year ago, and this is way prior to the spotlight being thrown on U.S. aid. But I do know that the American embassy was paying and trying to push the narrative in the Baltic states, specifically Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, that their cultures were morose, they were mundane, and that the only way to save them was through the vibrancy of mass immigration and the vibrancy of multiculturalism. And and without those things, I mean, there is a famous a woman who explained that without that vibrancy, that Europe wouldn't survive. But the United States was paying for these kinds of messages.
She had an American accent as well. I wonder if she
but this wasn't her, but it was the exact same message
I know.
that was being paid by American taxpayers into Baltic states, that their countries needed to become more like the United States. And the only way to do so was the importation of vibrant diversity, multiculturalism, and all of the benefits and all of the accoutrements and all of the blessings. As actually George Bush has called diversity being the blessing of diversity. Being imported, and if they hadn't, their countries had no future. So this has been going on for a long time. It's just that I think all of these sort of dots are now being connected back to U.S. aid. So
it's gone under, like, do I think that George Bush was sitting there one day and decided, like, I'm going to fund, like, I don't know, transgender operas in Ireland? No. What I think this is like, genuinely the deep state at work. Is that this thing has been, that US aid has been running for decades, because it's not really like a federal department. It's kind of like, you know, like you have the ministries and departments and stuff. This is not a ministry. It's kind of why it's been folded into the US State Department. This is like the definition of institutional rot, where obscure, oblique institutions just metastasize these weird ideas, these extreme, like, radical, insane politics. You know, like if you're a federal employee, depending on if you're a federal employee that works in Washington as an office worker, your politics are probably not going to be very Republican. Whereas if you're like working for ICE, or if you're working on Border Patrol or something like that, you're probably a bit more Republican minded. Like, would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you're not going to be basically hired into the institution unless you have the beliefs of most of the institution. You know, and when you were talking about these metastasizing government agencies, one of the reasons is, and I've been reading, is that in the last couple of decades, there hasn't been a single request for payment to be made by the Treasury Department of the United States that hasn't been paid. So, I mean, you imagine that these departments, they could put in, I don't know, they could put in a request for a study on the benefits of tap dancing monkeys. And these tap dancing monkeys, you know, they probably say, okay. And as I alluded to previously about supposedly the Pentagon needing $26 million a year for sushi, obviously it's not that, but they could, if they want the money for something, they say, okay, well, these tap dancing monkeys, we also need about $10,000 for each of the tap dancing monkeys' tuxedos. The shoes themselves are probably $1 million each, and the Treasury's just like, okay. Well, there's been a request for tap dancing monkey tuxedos and tap dancing monkey shoes. All right, there you go. There's $50 million. You know, so like, I mean, this is kind of where it's at, and these kind of just, I mean, these are Byzantine at this point. I mean, the United States, Western Europe, the Western nations themselves, unless there is something like what Trump is doing. That is not just, this can't just be a 1 month, 2 month, 6 month, 1 year, 2 year push. This has to be an entire overhaul of these systems. I mean, there is the concept of what we're entering is the fourth turning. And, you know, during this time, there's also like Sir John Glubb, there is Oswald Spengler, there's a whole host of different academics, thinkers, and books that you can read on the subject of just the cultural seasons that societies go through, civilizations go through, the spring, the summer, the autumn, and the winter. And in most instances, it does look like we are in the winter of civilization right now, and the breakdown. I mean, this is not something that people should go, oh my God, this is Alex Jones talking to you right now. It's not that. I mean, it's not just this sort of screeching and talking about the guns and the aliens are coming. It's not that. What it is that civilizations go through these almost transparent and predictable phases based on the way human beings and their civilizations evolve. I mean, and a lot of these thinkers are basically under unless there is some kind of massive the change is going to come one way or the other. I think manner in which that change goes.
I think that we, at least in the American sense, is you're starting to see a bit of a change there, because I am, like I say, you know, the stuff that's going on with Israel, like Elon could probably save like $1 trillion, and Donald Trump will probably turn around and give it straight to Israel. That's probably what's going to happen. But at the same time, under like these past couple weeks, I'm very optimistic in many ways with the way the administration is.
I agree. But here's the question for you, Michael. I mean, places like Canada, supposedly, I mean, Canada, it is a dumping ground, and I believe that, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I believe it gets every bad thing that comes to it. It deserves everything. It deserves absolutely all bad things that are coming to it, not the people themselves.
You are not the only Canadian person to have told me that in the past week.
Yeah, you know, that's just I have no sympathy whatsoever for the country. But going past Canada, you look at countries like Australia and most of Western Europe, and by Western Europe, I'm delineating on the lines of not the EU, but on the old Cold War lines. Yeah. In terms of, like, you know, Hungary still being part of Eastern or Central Europe, and Poland being part of Eastern Europe, not how people perceive the EU as today, is that all of these EU countries, everything that it's coming out of it, and especially the EU itself with Ursula von der Leyen. I mean, this woman is just unbelievably doubling down. But also the EU leadership in the UK, you've got this guy, Keir Starmer. I mean, this guy, what's going on in your country, it's just unbelievable.
Well, this is where because things are bad. Things are bad here at the moment. It is every day is a new humiliation ritual to wake up being British, because every day there is a new way that this government finds a way to just insult and spit in the face of. And I have been black-pilled. God knows, Felix, you will know this as well. I've been black-pilled, but this government is just mask off with the stuff. It is like full throttle, like up the Chagos Islands, where it's deciding to put its money, what it's cutting, what its foreign policy is. Like it's just full speed, like accelerationist to the pause. But you know, having to give, you know, looking for some bright sparks is. Culture is downwind of politics, or am I getting that the wrong way around? But either way, America sneezes and Europe catches a cold. That's what I'm looking at, and I think there's a lot of people who are looking at what's happening in the United States. I look at, you know, not everyone's cup of tea, but Nigel Farage and the Reform Party in the UK is looking to hopefully become the next government. You know, is Nigel as based as we want him to be? No, he's not. But is he, compared to what we have? Leagues away. You've got Elon Musk personally out there seeming devoted to trying to get the AfD elected in Germany. Probably not going to happen, but probably going to have a very good result for the AfD. So I think what's happening in the United States.
Well, hold on a second. With the AfD, a good result, but they're also talking about this. This is what I love. You know, in Western Europe is they're talking about, well, the AfD is a right-wing populist party that might become the most popular party in the Bundestag, or the Parliament of Germany, and therefore we're going to have to ban them because they're too right-wing. And also they've been excluded from almost every party, that no party would work with the AfD. So I mean, it's the same thing as when they had the Lisbon Treaty for the EU. I mean, it's like when countries, especially Ireland, would vote no, they'd say, okay, well, we'll have a revote, and then we'll just have another revote. We'll have another revote until you vote the way we want.
There's some nuance on the German situation. I'm not I grew up in Germany for a while, but I'm not an expert in the German situation. But from my understanding, if they ban the AfD, they ban the AfD, and I think that what will come of that, I don't think a lot of Germans will just take that sitting down. And I think that one, with Elon Musk's big push that's pro AfD, and Trump is looking for a fight with the EU. I think banning the AfD would send out some very bad vibes internationally and give Trump the sort of sensus belli to go after the EU and Germany.
Well, I think he's already doing that. So I mean, there's a super chat from Short Farrell, and he says, how can America pursue its Trumpian quest for empire globally along with Elon's SpaceX conquest? Thanks for a good stream, guys. Talking about the Trump conquest for empire, I think he's already at this point. He's talked significantly over the last couple of months about Greenland specifically. We'll just put Canada to the side. Whereas I read yesterday that Germany is now proposing an EU-wide expedition of troops to protect Greenland. And I'm thinking to myself, you've got what? Germany is going to protect Greenland from a military invasion of the United States, two NATO partners. It's getting to a point where I think Trump realizes the sort of dead end that Western Europe is. Western Europe is a decaying, and it has beautiful cities. I mean, like places like Paris, Vienna, they are museums, right? That are now filling up with a population that is like the name of our friend here, Short Farrell, that are filling up with feral people. And it's becoming a center. There's no innovation. Their only innovation is, we'll grow the economy by taxing our people more, right? And this is not an issue of the people themselves. It's an issue of the governing class and the tyrannical way that they are moving on.
I can't speak for most of Europe, but certainly in Britain, there is like a general and I think this is probably reflected in much of Europe. I think this is why you're seeing the rise of things like the AfD, why Marine Le Pen's party is sort of rising in the polls, even though you've got the issues going on in the National Assembly with the Mechelon and the communists and stuff. But I do think there's, especially in Britain, is the discourse I am seeing pretty much constantly on social media, on things like GB News and across the board, is that this country is in decline, is that this country is dying on its feet. And some of the, like Robert Jenrick, a person, like, for people who are not aware, Robert Jenrick he almost became the leader of the Conservative Party. Not shilling for Robert Jenrick, but I once helped in a by-election where he was first elected to Parliament, and he was known as Robert Generic because his view was just like the tried and true Conservative Party line on any issue that would advance his political career. But yeah, over the past year, like Robert Jenrick has become like this radical, I don't want to say nationalist, but like the stuff he's saying, like a few short years ago would have gotten hounded out of politics. You've got people like Rupert Lowell, the Reform MP, who is just like, deportations, millions of them, they all must go kind of stuff. So this is where I'm kind of getting a bit white pill. Well, not white pilled, but looking for a bit of optimism. Like, things are bad in the UK. The UK is going down the toilet, and people are starting to realize this in ways that they weren't before. People are openly saying, like, immigrants need to go. This is a problem because of immigration policy. Who's doing all the stabbings? Why is this? 18-year-old Welsh boy called Axel Rubicanabo, or whatever the fuck his name was, going around stabbing young white girls. You know, like the people who are openly talking about this stuff would never have done it a few short years ago. So I really do feel like in a way we kind of have another 2016 moment. So, you know, like 2016 happened, you had this big rise of right-wing politics in discourse. Could easily go the other way. Certainly the Labour government and European governments are angling to clamp down on this kind of discussion. So, you know, could go the way of 2016 where it all comes to nothing, everything falls apart, or else, you know, maybe because Trump is in his second term is really coming across quite punchy, you know, like so far his second term is leagues better, apart from Israel stuff, leagues better than what his first term was. You know, I'm hoping for a better result this time. And like I say, America sneezes, Europe catches a cold, and especially considering Elon is like positioning himself as like the billionaire funder of, like, you know, not saying he is not saying he is like, you know, the based right-wing savior of Europe or anything, but he is putting across our talking points, you know, personally going after Keir Starmer, constantly raising the rape gangs and stuff like that, constantly going after the German elections with the AfD. I do feel that we are entering into an era where things are getting worse, but at the same time the solutions are becoming more viable to turn things around. That's kind of my mindset. I'm curious about your view on that.
Well, yeah, I guess this would be a good place for us to sort of lead out. I think that there is definitely opposition brewing. I mean, you can see it with the ascension of the AfD. You're seeing it in places like Sweden. It was incredible. I was, what was it, in Sweden in January? I remember reading, it was January 25th, and there had already been 20 grenade attacks across Sweden. So 20 grenade attacks in the first 25 days of January. And it's obviously the same sort of political leanings or the shifts are happening there. You can see it in Italy. You can see it but you can't see it in places like Spain, which I don't really understand. France just seems like one big garbled mess. But across Europe, I mean, Eastern European countries are generally always based, very, very clear thinking people, because they've already spent 50 years of being subjugated by delusionary ideology, masking as some kind of like reality, and they understand how to deal with this.
But the big thing is like all these problems that are assailing Western European countries and the like is, whereas in previous years, whenever people said, well, who's doing this stuff? Why is this happening? Is you know, you'd get censored off social media. People could sort of gloss over it and just like, you know, oh, well, this is a man's issue, or this is young men running amok, you know, this is a man's issue kind of thing, or, you know,
this is for example, yeah, I know what you mean. They would say, oh, it's the patriarchy, when, you know, yeah.
Whereas now, if you go on to like just go on to Keir Starmer's Twitter page or any like Western head of government, and you just look at, like, especially whenever it comes to like a crime issue or an economic issue, and you just look at the replies to it, they're just constantly being ratioed. They just can't get away with the, you know, just sweeping it off, brushing it off the thing. It's just like, now they can't hide from it. Something's coming down the road, and like I say, because I'm in the UK and I can see it happening here, you can physically see the decline in the country happening week on week, month on month.
Well, I remember going with you and Count Dankula up to Birmingham. I don't know how to say it properly. Birmingham, and that city outside of the very center core, it looked third world for the most part. It really did. It looked like one big blighted, scary ghetto. You know, and you know, a lot of London looks like that too. You know, if you get outside of like Westminster and Camden and the nicer areas, you know, Kensington and whatever, you get out of the nicer boroughs of London, it starts looking pretty creepy as well. But I mean, outside of like South,
well, this is common across all of Western Europe. But what I'm going to say is, like, in the UK, is, as you can see, physically experienced the decline in the country week on week, month on month, is, you know, where I'm taking a bit of heart is looking at the electoral polls. Is you're also seeing like the Reform Party rise in opinion polls.
Well,
Week
did
on
they
week,
not
month on month.
cross the threshold of being more popular than the Conservatives yesterday or the day before?
Going by recent polling, they're actually in lead. They're leading Labour.
That's what I mean. They're leading
Yeah.
them by a couple of points now. The Reform
Yeah.
Party,
And
they
again,
crossed that threshold. Have they not?
Reform is not where we want to be in a lot of places, but going by what we've had, like leagues better than what the default is, leagues better than what the Conservative opposition is. It's like a Reform government would be, again, wouldn't be as based as where we would all ideally like it to be, but compared to what we have is, and this is kind of my view on politics in general, is you can sort of say like, be black-pilled and say nothing will ever get better, or you can sort of take a more, what I would say, a nuanced approach where you look at it and you say, this is turning the dial back in our direction. This is making things either better, or if not better, just less worse than what we have. And that's kind of where I view like electoral politics is where you have to sort of take your mindset with that. And like Reform getting into government would be so much better. Not ideal by a long shot, but so much better than what we've got and what we've had in this country for decades. And this wouldn't happen. Genuinely, I don't think this would be happening if Donald Trump didn't win the election again and Elon Musk wasn't. And again, both have their big problems, and I'll be here willing to say about their big problems. But the alternative, if like say Kamala was elected, like,
oh yeah, absolutely.
it's far better than what the alternative was. That's not to say you should come out and shill for these people just because they're better than the alternative. But, you know, compared to what the alternative was, the mouth breathing silly Billy who was the president, and then the woman who was unburdened by what has been, who would have replaced him. Like, you know, the Americans have dodged a bullet, and they're going through, from what I'm perceiving at the moment, is like a genuine like renovation in their culture, in their politics, in their general outlook in life. Like the Americans I'm speaking to, you know, granted I'm in a very strange little political sphere on my own, but they're genuinely optimistic. And God knows, living in Britain at the moment, I would love to have this optimism here. And I'm hoping like this wind of change starts to like blow across the Atlantic sooner rather than later. And it already is to a degree.
Well, that's hopeful. Let's hope so. As you say, you know, I mean, I've read the same thing. I mean, in terms of Europe, I mean, it's just it's always a few years behind whatever America does. The same thing is whatever sort of new social experiments take place out of California. As California goes America. As America goes Europe. With that said, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Is there any way or anything you want to add to the end, and perhaps where people could find you? I could also add your information into the description or the sort of pinned comment when we finish up here. Is there, you want to just tell people how they can find you or what you're all about?
Yeah. So as I said at the start, Michael, I mostly focused on Russia and Ukraine, but kind of branching out a bit from that. Obviously going to be paying close attention to that as Trump's much anticipated peace formula for Russia and Ukraine event is expected to come out this month. So I'll delve back into that at the time. Other than that, I just kind of play about on the internet. I'm just trying to. Some people were asking for my Rumble.
Yeah, I've just put your Telegram into all of the chats. If you want to pass along your Rumble, I'll do that as well.
My Rumble, I mostly use it for gaming streams, and like I say, every week I do a gaming stream with Count Dankula.
Yeah, we did a stream last week with Count Dankula, the two of us.
Yeah, on the inauguration.
Yeah, the inauguration. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, good. So mostly using it for gaming streams at the moment, but I am hoping to kind of.
I would encourage everyone to look into, even if you don't like Rumble, at least you can speak a lot more honestly on Rumble than you can on YouTube. You don't always have to be worrying about your word choices about this, that, or the other thing. YouTube is basically a ghetto. I mean, it's a soft porn site if you like watching women, rubbing. I mean, I watched one on a pigeon breast pump. the other day. Somebody said,
yeah, I've seen that as well.
Yeah.
She knows exactly what she's doing. She
Oh,
is gaming the system.
absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, if you like soft porn, and there's lots of yoga and breast pumps and whatnot on YouTube, but I mean, political speech is just not there. I mean, the only people you'll see on there are the ones. I mean, somebody I actually had it above, and I've been hearing like people like Vaush are now like begging their audience for super chats because their US aid is funded out. I mean, exactly where we began this conversation. All of these bread tubers were artificially inflated, and their political competition was vanquished because their ideas do not hold merit. And and this is the same thing. I mean, because you don't have an open free market of ideas on platforms like YouTube. You just don't. They are actually really a disgusting platform. And if I could just get people to come over to my Rumble channel, for God's sakes, the link is in the description, guys. Please just go over there and subscribe to me there. And then you won't have to come to YouTube and watch these live streams. It's live streaming over there right now on Rumble. And I also upload every video I upload goes on to Rumble at least a day earlier than it goes up there. So I mean, I've got a pretty big following on BitChute, but BitChute, I'm not able to restream onto BitChute presently. So there is an archive on BitChute. And Odyssey, I don't know what's going on with Odyssey. It seemed like it was going well for a while, but it seems to pretty much be tanking, unfortunately.
Yeah, I actually think it was they had some kind of big court battle with the US FCC, was it?
Right.
Because of their little cryptocurrency, and I think that kind of did it in.
No, okay. Yeah, so there's a few things about Vaush going on there. I do know that, I mean, there is. I mean, I think I saw an interview with him with Count Dankula again, our guy Dankula, asking him about his predilections toward children and his love of horse meat. And not the meat that you eat, but the meat that he likes having injected into himself. Yeah, I mean, the man is disgusting. He's a disgusting human being. And perverts like this man were the ones that were being funded, obviously. So I would suggest people, go on over to Rumble and check it out, and you can watch all of this there, and you don't have to come on to a disgusting site like YouTube that is there just to censor people and promote. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to become a gooner listening to stuff like this.
Touch wood. Hopefully, there's some executive orders, and the cultural vibe shift means YouTube adopts a more positive attitude towards people like Felix and the like. But if it doesn't, it's always good to just kind of divest, and just branch out onto other platforms. Because again, kind of like 2016, we don't know how long and how sustainable this vibe shift that it's kind of beneficial.
Exactly. So, because the moment, like, I mean, 2016 on all across social media, it was like the Wild West. And once Trump won his first presidency, I mean, it just took a little bit of time, and they just started clamping down harder. And by the end of not even the end of his first term, he was still a sitting president. They deplatformed him off of everything. A sitting president of the United States, and that was it basically was a 4-year journey. And then after, from 2016 to 2020, 2020 to 2024, it's just been a nightmare. So okay, with that said, I want to say thanks, Michael, for being here. I should tell you guys, I'm going to be starting a weekly show this Saturday, US time, Eastern Standard Time. It'll be I believe it'll be around this time. Please check that out. So it's what day of the week is it? It's Thursday night, I believe, in Eastern Standard Time right now. I'm in a bit of a different time zone, as you probably have figured out. So I'll have that going, and it's going to be a weekly show. starting this Saturday, and hopefully you'll be able to join it. I'll have some sort of link up about it, about it probably a day before. Just to give you guys
some guys just asked for my Rumble. Are you able to just quickly give that?
I thought I did. I'll put it back in there, guys. I'll add it as the pin chat on the Rumble and on the I'll add it as the on the Rumble and the YouTube, and it will basically as it goes to be archived on Odyssey and on BitChute, it'll just be there by default. So yeah, it's there in the thing. I'll put it a couple more times, guys. It's M. Della Brock. There you go. You should be able to see it on all of the different ones. I just want to say hi to the guys. Oh yeah, and everyone who's watching on D Live, thanks very much. I still like that one right there. Very much.
D Live.
Oh yeah, I still stream on D Live. There's still some guys over there, so it's not bad. So yeah. With that said, I'm sorry.
Have you counted your lemons recently?
I have not counted my lemons. Lemons. No, but I probably should. Probably some over there. Anything else you want to just say? Or are you good at saying that? I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. Thanks for coming along, guys. Hope it was insightful.
Yeah, definitely. All right, everybody. Thanks very much. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.